What is your leadership love language? Do you know your leadership love language? Because not knowing your leadership love language, when pressure rises, you don't lead from your intentions, you lead from your defaults. If you've been showing up but it's not landing, the issue may not be effort. It may be alignment. Today we're discovering your leadership love language so you can care, and so it lands and your expectations stay clear. Welcome to the Empowerment Minutes podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Maurine Kwende, CEO of EMK Learning Solutions, where I partner with learning and development leaders, HR directors, and higher education leaders to build unstoppable, future-ready organizations. So every month we pick a theme. So welcome to the month of February. This is the first episode we're recording in the month of February. So today is Wednesday. Well, today is Tuesday, by the way. And so we're kicking off a new theme, and the theme of the month is the love language of leadership. So this is a very exciting theme. Why? Because February, as we know, is the month of love. So there is also love in leadership, right? As a leader, I say this all the time. If you don't love the people you lead, there is no point in leading them, right? So you have to lead from the heart. So this month, we're going to be exploring what it looks like to lead with care that actually lands, starting with the leaders first. You cannot lead other people. You cannot show love for other people when you're not loving yourself first. So that's why the theme of this month is just very specific and very exciting, the love language of leadership. So I started by asking you guys, what is your love language as a leader? Right. So if you think about, love languages, right? You've probably heard about Gary Chapman, Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote a book, The 5 Love Languages, right? And so love languages do not apply only to life. They also apply to your leadership, right? So it translates to leadership differently. But let me say this. If you don't know your love language, here's how you can discover it. If you don't know how you naturally express care, and you'll default to one style, especially when you're stressed, tired, or moving fast, right? You're under pressure. And then you wonder what you're doing, right? Why you're doing everything and still not getting trust, engagement, or buy-in, right? And that's where your leadership love language gap shows up. It shows that there is a gap in terms of your leadership love language, right? So sometimes leaders think the gap is only about employees not appreciating what's being done, but often the gap begins earlier where the leader hasn't identified their own default care language. So as you're listening, right, I want to ask you, what's your default care language, right? And so you want to discover that by noticing how you're supporting people by default. Right. So when you're under pressure, do you give more feedback? Do you give more direction? Do you jump in to remove obstacles? Right. Do you prioritize one-on-one time? Right. Do you have that open door policy for growth? Right. Do you publicly recognize public wins, or do you recognize wins in private? Right. Once you're able to track the data and answer to this question that I just asked you, then you can be able to determine what your love language is. Right. And you can also ask the people, from your team, right? Ask feedback. Ask them, when have you felt most supported by me? The answers is going to give you some clues to help you understand what your leadership love language is. And so you can be able to identify those patterns from what they're describing. Okay. So now let's talk about the tool, the 5 professional love languages. If you've heard about the love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman, you want to translate it to within your professional space, within your leadership, right? So now let's talk about the first one. It talks about feedback and clarity, right? You show care through clear direction, specific feedback, recognition, right? You believe clarity reduces stress. And you're right. So because we know clarity is kindness, right? Another love language is that of supporting and, clearing all roadblocks, right? You show care by removing barriers. You're securing resources and stepping up strategically to unblock anything that's starting as a barrier to your work. Another language is being able to provide that undivided presence where you're showing care through focused attention, right? Doing those meaningful check ins, listening and being fully present. I can definitely share so many, examples of leaders that I knew that were in the room, but they were not fully present, right? So you want to be able to provide that undivided attention presence to your team. All right. What about growth? What about career investments, right? You want to be able to show care by opening those doors. What are those opportunities that you can stretch? Right? What are ways that you can build skills, right? What about mentorship? What about visibility? What about sponsorship, right? And of course, we know that when we think about love in leadership, there is no way we can talk about that showing love or showing love for ourselves without recognition, right? So it's your love language being able to show care by giving credit, by celebrating those wins, by showing up for those key moments, those pivotal moments in ways that are meaningful and professional, right? So when you think about all this that we've just shared, right, none of this is wrong, right? The risk is being able to overuse one language. You've probably heard about overusing one of your strengths, right? So the same idea applies here. Are you overusing what your love language, right? And so you want to think about that. Reflect and see if you've been doing that. And one way that some of the ways that the clues that you can get is when you start seeing frustration, disengagement, or misinterpretation, right? Let me give you a scenario, right? One time I coached a leader whose default language was support and just clearing those roadblocks. When the team was overwhelmed, she just jump in and start doing pieces of their work to help, right? To her, she was just being caring, right? But her team felt like she's micromanaging us. She does not trust us. Okay, so where do you see yourself in what I've just shared, right? What they needed really was not help in doing their work. What they needed was really having that undivided presence, right? Showing maybe support in doing like a 15 minutes of coaching where they're having some clarity about what the challenge is, right? And so now they had to shift from let me fix it to let me coach what the challenge is. And then as a result, trust improved, right? There was no more micromanagement and then performance improved. So now I'm going to turn it to you. When you think about your own love language, right? This week, maybe you want to do a 30 minutes, a 30 seconds reset, right? And so identify your default love language. Now pick one person that you felt a disconnect with lately and ask them this question. When you are under pressure, what makes you feel more supported? More frequent feedback, clearing roadblocks, or a 15 minutes undivided coaching session. Then listen carefully whatever they're telling you, right? And then that helps you to close that leadership love language gap because now you're leading with intention, with intentionality, not making those assumptions. So I would like to challenge you if you want to strengthen your own self-leadership and build a people-first culture where care and accountability work together. I would like to encourage you to stay connected with EMK Learning Solutions, where we're always sharing these leadership tips and then upcoming training sessions and resources where you can continue to empower yourself, okay? So next week, we're going to even get deeper into the first love language and why being vague is one of the quickest ways to increase stress from your teams and lower trust. We'll talk about how you can give affirmation that actually lands and how clarity becomes a form of care. Until next time, I want to challenge you to lead boldly, live intentionally, and keep leading with love. This is Dr. Maurine Kwende signing off.